Okay, so it's been pretty interesting last week. Apparently, it seems like the NDC is having a victory parade. They're patting themselves on the back for having had a few people in Beausejour, and it seems like the biggest adventure in the world. They're wallowing in the mud, rolling over, and patting themselves on the shoulder, and couldn't be happier. It is interesting though. In February, when the NNP had their women's convention in the Trade Center, they were not that happy. They were actually terrified. They were actually worried. And they were so worried, they were trying to calm the nerves of their followers. So it's like, don't worry. Anybody, if they plan properly, can gather a few people together and we can do the same thing. You know, one of the major podcast hitters was said, please don't worry, don't panic, it's okay. You know, they had a few people in the Trade Center. Don't worry, we'll be able to do the same thing. So now they're taking a victory walk and they're like, whoa, yeah, we did it. We got 3,000-4,000 people in Beausejour. You know, so it seems like it gives them a little confidence boost. It's like, okay, yeah, we're still a little relevant, you know. Interestingly, though, the head of the administration, the head of their party, seem hell-bent on attacking Peter David. And I wonder why. Well, of course, I made a whole vid about it. And it's quite obvious that he himself is panicking. I mean, I looked at his body language throughout the event in Beausejour, and he didn't look terribly happy. Not at all. Not by any measure. As a matter of fact, he had that look of concern, of alarm on his face. So he decided, you know what? I'm going to take in front. I'm going to fire the first blow. I am going to attack Peter David. But say what they want to say, Peter David has never been and probably never will be attached to any misappropriation of funds. Has never been accused of using the machinations of government to try to enrich himself. He has a pretty straight and clean record when it comes to that. I guess he doesn't need to resort to any of that to accrue and make his wealth. These are the sort of people that you need in government. People who don't really need bribes, who really have a good handle on their career and can make their money and do things. You know what I'm saying? So in no way they have to pilfer the coffers of government. So in that sense, Peter David is a good guy. Well, let's just take a little look back at the last election, 2022 election. And one thing was clear in that last election is that St. George's, the tongue of St. George in particular, and St. Andrews seems to be the bulwark of Grenadian fortitude and strength and resolve of mind. The people thereof seems to have very strong mind and is not easily bamboozled or captivated by sweet, colorful rhetoric. I mean, look what happened. Peter David won the seat of the tongue of St. George, even in the midst of the blitz from the NDC. And of course, look what happened in St. Andrews, in the Northeast, in the Southeast, and in the Northwest. So, well, of course, we understood what happened eventually with the Northwest, but it clearly shows me that the people of St. Andrews, especially in Grenville, would not allow themselves to be bamboozled, to be captivated. And if you look at the history of the people, it's quite obvious. They are the bulwark. They are the defense. They are the protection of the Grenadian people against fanciful speeches, against cunning, against charlatans, against snake oil salesmen. The people of the tongue of St. George would never allow themselves to be bamboozled or ever captivated by charlatans. Never will dare. They have too much pride. And they are of strong mind. And that is why you see in the last election, when many others were caught up by the rhetoric, when many others were caught up by the snake oil salesmen and the youthful adventurers, the tongue of St. George stood firm. The people of St. Andrews stood firm. The people of St. Mark's stood firm. But then again, these are some very, very strong people. Even the people of St. John's, they barely got away in St. John's. Barely. And I sympathize, of course, with many people who got taken by the wave of the scam. I sympathize, but guess what? Soon enough, right now, these very people are thinking twice. They have now seen what situation they've put themselves in, and they have realized that these youthful adventurers, these snake oil salesmen, these charlatans are only concerned about themselves, about using the machinations of government to enrich themselves, and about giving the people of Grenada pennies on the dollar. So I guarantee you, fool me once, but you're not gonna fool me twice. So just imagine, they said that they had such a beautiful convention. It was successful by every margin. Okay? They tried to throw shade on Dr. Keith Mitchell. They had adventurous plans to take over the Northwest. And some things were said that were downright disgraceful. So after using the very Beausejour playground, which was built and which was maintained by the NNP Administration and Dr. Mitchell, guess what they did? This is how ungrateful, disrespectful, arrogant that these people are. That they decided and said, one of their podcast hitters decided to say, Dr. Mitchell has not done anything to that park. Imagine the very park that they had such a wonderful convention. And he should have turned it into a mini. And he should have turned it into a mini stadium. And it should have been much more. And guess what? Two of their peeps were actually on the swings, swinging side by side, enjoying the park. And what a celebration it was. It was jubilee. It was fantastic. It was like a carnival. Right on the very park that Dr. Mitchell and his administration brought into being. And again, their major podcast hitter was trying to throw shade at Dr. Mitchell. He hasn't done nothing. And it's quite obvious this gentleman didn't know what that place looked like prior to there being a park. He doesn't even realize that he's on sacred ground, hallowed ground, when he's in Beausejour. That there should be more respect attached to Beausejour. That it took a Dr. Keith Mitchell to transform that place, to give it some dignity. And I always say, it is very easy to condemn. What is difficult is getting something started. That is the most difficult thing. Once you get something started and you have momentum, you can keep it going. It's like a car. To get it started, you need about 4 guys to give it a push if it doesn't start. Once it's started, you can easily keep it going. So much more credit has to be given to Dr. Mitchell. He started it. Had he not started it, you guys would not have been able to have your carnival on the Beausejour playground. So you should have shown a lot more gratitude. And a matter of fact, when you open in prayer, you should have prayed for the men who sacrificed their life on the very grounds of Beausejour. The men whose blood drenched the cane fields in protection of their country. How about that? But you didn't do that. But you were busy throwing shade on Dr. Mitchell. Well, I'll give you a little background. That very Beausejour, young Grenadian men sacrificed their life trying to protect the Beausejour radio station that existed there. A matter of fact, many of them lost their lives, and the radio station was captured by the so-called intervention forces at the time. And it's funny, because this gentleman, he's from the area, Grand Roy or whatever, and a lot of young men, barely teenagers, lost their life at that place. And then he thought it the most fitting thing to do is to try to throw shade on Dr. Mitchell, the one who actually brought this playground into being. So these young men from his area lost their life trying to counterattack and retake the radio station at Beausejour from the intervention forces. Now, when that didn't succeed, guess what? Carnage, Green Street men, and a few men from town, with some others from the western side, was able to launch an effective counterattack and had what would have been at the time foreign forces on the run. So much so that so many lessons were learned from that experience in Beausejour and the experiences at Point Celine that the most sweeping legislation made by the United States of America since the Korean War, the 1984 Nichols-Goldwater Act of 1984, the most sweeping legislation made since 1958, which reworked the Army Command, reworked the Special Forces Command, and ensured that there was constant communication and proper communication between different branches of the armed forces. Don't take my word for it. You guys are internet savvy. You're young. You're all so young. And you all know so much. You can check it out. And you see, let's talk about that youthfulness and that young thing now. Because I'm going to dispel all that myth right now. Because what you guys are trying to do is trying to deceive the Grenadian people and feel like all of a sudden you guys are some special youthful generation. And oh, they're young, and you emphasize they're young. And especially this podcast said, oh, they're young, they're young. Well, let me tell you something, young man. Let me tell you right now. Listen to me carefully. Youth and youthfulness and being young is not, hear me out, is not a prerequisite for leadership. I'm going to say it again. Being young is not a prerequisite for leadership. You know what is a prerequisite for leadership? Competence. The ability to do and deliver what you are expected to do. Competence. Remember that word, competence. So when you talk about, oh, we're young, I'm not impressed. Because you know who I'm impressed with? I am impressed with the young men who, under the terror of debt, who under the terror of losing their life, some of them 15, barely 17, stood up against one of the greatest army in the world. These are real young men who are young. They could boast about their youthfulness and what they did in their youth. Because they're to grave personal bodily harm, okay, and terror, stood up and manned some of the most sophisticated weaponry that existed at the time. They sat in World War II ZU anti-aircrafts and stood up or attempted to stand up to one of the greatest armies in the world. So you here now come parading yourselves and thinking that you're smarter than everybody, okay? And you're young. Don't tell me about youthfulness. Don't tell Grenadian people who know better about youthfulness and what the youth of Grenada has always been progressive. What you guys are unique? All of a sudden you're the only young people or the only young generation? There are people who are alive. Was part of a great process. Ask them how old they were when they were officers. Ask them how old they were when they were part of the process. So you're not that special. Do not delude yourselves into believing that you're so special. As a matter of fact, you're much older than them. And what they achieved before they were 30 or 40, you guys could live about 10 lifetimes and never achieve it. So today, I want to dispel this whole myth You guys keep parading all over the place. Oh, young, we're young. Let me tell you something. Youth can sometimes be a very dangerous thing. Imagine a car that has a V8 engine, powerful and strong, and could do a lot of things. If that very car, with all that power, is not driven by someone who has good judgment and wisdom, then that car wouldn't last long. That car wouldn't last long. And the way I see it, we may have some young people, but the problem is they're ungrateful, they're arrogant, and they're adventurous. And not adventurous in the positive sense of being adventurous. I call it youthful adventurism. Reckless, youthful adventurism. So to me, ungratefulness, not respecting the generations that came before you, arrogance is a recipe for disaster. Ask some of your family members or whatever, or ask them. Ask them what youthful adventurism, youthful arrogance did to a country. Yeah, I'm talking about Grenada. Ask them what it did to the country. Ask them. So when you decide to thump your chest and talk about how young you are, you're not impressing no one. And you know what's sad? I can understand the younger kids might get caught up in that because, we're young. But you know what's sad? Again, I have to always say, they are grown people who know better, who basically have sold their souls for pennies because they want to be part of this. They're being, probably being paid. They're probably singing for their supper. So they should know better. But they allow this to prevail. They allow this to prevail because they're getting pennies on a dollar. So, now you know. When you're in Beausejour, you're in sacred, hallowed ground. And you should show a little more respect for the man and his administration that actually took the time to get the Beausejour playground going, the place where you had your big carnival. Without which, you guys couldn't have your carnival. A matter of fact, if I remember well, when they were going through the cane fields and tried to get this park together, they actually discovered the remains of Grenadian soldiers in the cane fields. And here you guys are to this day trying to throw shade on Dr. Keith Mitchell. You should be ashamed of yourselves. So let's talk about, there's all that talk about, we must build people and we care about people. And one of the podcast hitters for them is saying, don't worry about concrete buildings and big construction and big infrastructure. This government is about people and worried about people and building people. My friend, there isn't an economy in the world where construction, an infrastructural project, has a direct correlation with economic growth. It is actually a measure of how good a country is doing. And it gives the country a sense of pride when you create something tangible that you can look at and you can see. You can say, this was our design. This was our creation. And if you say you care so much about people and you're all about people and you want to build people, I'll tell you what is the first hallmark of showing that you love people and you love your own people. And what is the greatest hallmark? Is being fiscally responsible with their hard-earned taxpayer money. If you want to show how much you love the Grenadian people, then you would be fiscally responsible with their money and whatever donations or benefit that they would have gotten from international sources. You're not going to squander it. You're not going to use it to enrich yourself. But they always tell you should always look at a man's history, or you should always look at people's history. And if you look, y'all want to talk about Peter David? If you look at the trajectory of that man's ascension to power, you would see that he has worked tirelessly to achieve those things that he achieved. Okay? You would see that here's a man dedicated to his career. And the question is, why isn't he allowed to have ambition? Everybody else is allowed to have ambition. Every single time Peter David tries to express his ambition, he's accused of something sinister. But let's talk about the trajectory of these youthful adventurers. Let's talk about them. Look at the trajectory and ascension of they themselves. It's alleged one of them joined an established legal firm. I know the people who are involved in that firm, who started and broke their backs to create that firm. As a matter of fact, one of the original people did that and actually did physical backbreaking work. But guess what? They jumped in to something that was already established. What did they do? Got the experience, left the company, and did something that is usually frowned upon in the business circles and in the business environment. They pretty much pilfered, stole some of the clients of that company they were working with. Allegedly. Now tell me, what is that? It's called opportunism. So when you see they all came together, it is a band of opportunists. They saw a void in the NDC party. They don't know the hard work that went into building that institution. And they came in and hijacked that party. Well, if I were you, the way these people talk about young and old, if I were you older people in the NDC, I would be worried. I would be shaking in my boots. Because guess what? For the hostile takeover that they did in the NDC, guess what? They're coming for you guys. All you older remnants in the NDC, they're coming for you guys. You would be sidelined. So you thought it was, oh yeah, we welcome, well, let them come in. These are people, it's quite obvious, who have unrestrained arrogance, unrestrained greed, unrestrained appetite for the big and good life. So, let me see how you're going to stop them from using the machinations of government to enrich themselves. Let me see how you will. And they will purge that NDC party of all the foundation people, of all the people that broke their backs to build that party. So all of you, the remnants, and it's just a matter of time, all the little old revolutionaries who hijacked the NDC party too, and I know you catering to them, and guess what? It's just a matter of time that they're coming for you guys too. They're going to sideline you. They're going to neutralize you. Mark my words. You will see. You have created a monster that you can no longer control. Many of you should read Animal Farm, and I'm sure many of you have read Animal Farm. I hope some of you don't end up like the donkey in the story. I hope. Just remember, they're young and they're strong. We never had young and strong people in Grenada. Immemorial, youth in Grenada has always played a major part. So you guys are not special. Somebody told you guys you were special? I don't know who told you guys you were special. I don't know who told you guys you were brighter and smarter than everybody else. But you see, the reason that some people are starting to, see the light. But the reason you might have gotten away with some of that, and I always say it, and it's a fact, that you sort of rode the tide of what was happening in America at the time. I noticed I started to study the whole, how you guys won the election and stuff like that. I've looked back at it, and I look back at what you were saying during the campaign and stuff. And I realized that pretty much what you guys were doing, you guys were modeling or copying the campaign of the Democrat Party and the ideas of the Democrat Party in the United States. And then you're repackaging that and selling it to the Grenadian people. And because that whole woke ideology was already blasted out by international media to the mass of Grenadian people and the mass of people in the world, it was already embedded in their consciousness. So what you were saying by repeating what was happening in the United States by the Democrat Party and all the woke ideology and all the stuff you were saying resonated with the Grenadian people. So they got duped. And then now I see what you're doing in the midst of fiscal degradation and in the midst of giving them pennies on a dollar. You're hypnotizing the people with Jubilee, with Carnival, with bright lights. And as you talk about lights, let's divert a little. Because I remember, one of the podcasts editors said, Keith Mitchell and his administration never light the place. Stop your nonsense. All these playgrounds were taken care of. The difference is it was done by traditional means with electricity, and it's a little more labor intensive. So now, as time passes and technology has improved, of course, it's easy to put up a pole and put a few solar lights on it. What is significant about that? What is so amazing about a few solar lights? Again, we understand that is probably poke barrel to give to your insiders. We know that. But anyway, that is a function of improved technology, accessibility. And these things are penny on a dollar now these days. It's like when some people had a VCR, then after VCR went out, nobody uses a VCR anymore. So don't be arrogant and dismiss what people did, because everything that you are enjoying right now is on the backs of the generation before you and the generation before that. But your youthful arrogance, and I don't know why you guys think that you're so youthful. Guys, what? Some of you are in your 40s already. The same Morrison and them that you guys admire so much, these guys was in their 30s. Actually, at the end of their life. Again, ask some of your old comrades that helped hijack the NDC party. Ask them how old they were when they were officers and when they were involved in all kind of political organizations and youth organizations. Again, you guys are not special. So don't let me ever hear you talking. Okay? All the podcast hitters about they're young and we're young and we ain't thinking so. That's nonsensical thinking to begin with. Because every generation builds upon the work of the previous generation. And it probably would be wise to learn from the previous generation. But there are grown people among you. There are grown people in your midst, as I said, who are the go along, get along gang. They're like, we're getting a couple of dollars, Let's not rock the boat. Let's not say anything. But this thing will have a lifetime. There is just a matter of time that it will come to a head. It's unsustainable. It's like the same woke ideology in the United States. Democrat Party at the height of their power and wealth, and they thought this was going to last forever. Until they got a blistering blow from Trump and the Republican Party. Now, again, let's talk about that. Because I want to just remind you guys so that you can have ideological clarity and platform and understand what you're voting for when you support a particular party. Now, the NNP is a conservative center-right party. And I would think most of the people in Greater should be conservative people. But then you have the NDC, a center-left socialist Marxist party. We're seeing the consequences of toying with that. So why on God's earth would the people of Grenada want to toy with socialist Marxist doctrine? Tell me why. You have to understand that when you vote for an NDC, the platform of the NDC is a center-left platform. So all the ideas and the ideals that you're voting for, guess who's their sister party internationally? Progressive Alliance. Guess who they're allied with internationally? The Democrat Party. Have you seen the demise of the Democrat Party? Have you seen where that party almost took the American people? Into the abyss of darkness? What makes you feel that a country which is much smaller, like Grenada, more vulnerable, what makes you feel that a center-left party hijacked by socialist Marxists, it's not going to do the same thing? Haven't you seen the downward spiral of the NDC party over the decades? The NDC party was actually more right of center than the NNP initially. For those who really understand the genesis of the NDC party. And then you see over the years, it has progressively been infiltrated by socialist Marxists and become more left of center. So there was a little, I like to say, a little accident because of the climate that existed in the world, and people were stressed and people were frustrated and they're confused. That COVID did a number on people's intellectual clarity and consciousness. So it was a perfect atmosphere and time for charlatans and snake oil salesmen to survive and thrive. But these things are no more. So a lot of people have dispelled fear from their heart and have become more ideologically sound and have got more clarity and have seen the opportunists for what they are. And a lot of people understand now that their platform, their ideological doctrine, which they're suffering to try to put together. So it's pretty much an amalgamation of their personal ideologies. And if you look at the people who are in there, their personal ideologies, their traditional values, Christian values of our society, of Grenadian society, does not coincide with the platform of the NDC. So if you see them praying and all that kind of thing, they believe in none of that. None of that they believe in. That's part of the game, you know? And of course, there are some God-fearing people within the who are being duped. They don't even understand what they're part of. They themselves do not have ideological clarity of what institution, organization that they're part of. That's why I'm here, to enlighten you. And again, remember the test is simple, especially for Christians. The test is simple. By their fruits you shall recognize them. Simple. So for all of you who are in there and you're praying for them and all you're praying for them, these people want all your praise. I keep telling you. These people are about money. They don't want to pray. They don't believe in all of that. You may believe in it and you try to be part of the organization. But if you read your scriptures, it warns you, you cannot dwell. You cannot dwell among them. Don't worry. Sooner or later, you will see what I'm talking about. It's unsustainable, my friends. So that is the reason why the upper echelons of the party, they know the gig will be over soon. That is why you see they are so avaricious. And they're taking as much as they can while it lasts. What are they giving to you? What are they giving to you? And they come and they rationalize it in the parade and the carnival they had in Beausejour. You say, well, the only reason that you're not getting, or some of you not getting, is because you didn't tell us who you were or who you are. Did you need to tell them who you are and who you were when you were voting for them? Did you? It's so funny. A friend of mine, in Grenada, who's actually residing in Grenada, said to me, boy, he's in the South. He says, boy, when the men needed my little help and things like that, they said, come and check me. He says, but no, them men didn't even call him in. Yeah? Yeah. But don't worry. 6 months before the election, they'll come, and splurge on you a little bit to try to, dupe you again into voting. But I know one set of people they're not going to catch. The people of the tongue of St. George. The people of the tongue of St. Andrews. The people in Grenville. The people in St. Andrews, Northeast and Southeast. They're not going to catch those people. Neither would they catch the people of St. Mark's. And they barely caught the people of St. John's. They've already started to awaken. And the rest of the country will awaken to the sham. Will awaken to the flim-flam. Will awaken to the charlatans. Will awaken to the bush doctors and the mystics. That's what they are. They're financial voodoo economists. It's quite clear. Look what they do. Well, one thing I can't wait to do and see is the budget. And I'm sure you guys are anxiously anticipating the budget too. So they come with these fantastic ideas. Teaching hospital and big, gigantic project. We'll see. I guarantee you though, based on my preliminary numbers, what they're talking about to get this done, it's not even close with what they're saying they want to do. So either it will be a plan to scale down, or it's going to flop. I don't know who they've been listening to. I don't know who's been advising them. Probably is a next bunch of snake oil salesmen too. Those of a feather flock together. You know what the saying? Birds of a feather flock together? Yeah. Be prepared, my friends. Be prepared. And I'm your voice of reason. I'm your voice of reason. I guarantee you that before too long, you would be grateful to me. And you would realize that I had your best interest at heart. That I am trying to enlighten you. On that note, Guten Abend.